Thank you so much for coming today to this Lunch and Learn about effective D2L organization. The reason we're talking about this topic is we did have a student voices panel, and at that panel, we also conducted a mini survey, and the responses in that panel and that survey came out from the students that they really appreciate a well-organized course in D2L. So we want to be able to talk about some ways you can organize your course and really dive into that today. So we're going to explore different examples of organization in D2L and determine organization style that is most effective for specific courses. So it's definitely not a one size fits all approach, but it's figuring out what works best for your content, for you as an instructor, and for your students. And I'll be hosting with Adrian. Adrian, say hi.
Hi.
There we go. All right. So take a peek at this picture and which space is easier to navigate, the top or the bottom, and why? Feel free to put it into the chat or to unmute to give your thoughts.
The bottom.
The bottom.
And also,
Why?
how did you get a picture of my junk drawer, Laura? It's exactly what it looks. The top, unfortunately, is exactly what it looks like.
Oh, I was going to say the bottom is actually what mine looks like, Carrie Ann. I'm sorry that yours is the top.
You know why? Because your children are not old enough to mess with your junk drawer yet.
Wow, it's already gotten heated, and we're like, what? We are 3 minutes into this one. All right, the throwdown has begun.
And I was going to tease you, Carrie Ann, that actually it was your son who sent me the picture.
Yes, the children would do that. They would tell on me.
And if we're looking at it, what makes the bottom easier to navigate? What are the characteristics about it?
Well, I
Like
see somebody has put little like boxes in it.
Yeah, that's good use for all those checkbook boxes we used to get, right?
Purely read the KonMari guidebook.
Exactly.
Same things are located together.
Yeah, we've got some same things together. I thought it was interesting because in this box here, we have sharp implements like knives and things like that. And we also have Sharpies. So I don't know if there was some kind of a naming protocol here too. I don't know, but any other thoughts?
It's less stressful when you're looking at the bottom, because you know what you have. It's like it's the difference between going to the supermarket and looking in the fridge first versus not, and then you come home and you realize you have 6 milks and no apples or something.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I like that you say about that. You know what you have. You have that opportunity that when you look at it and at a glance, you can get a feel for what's in the drawer, get a feel for what materials you have, and maybe what you'll be able to do with those materials. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Adrian?
Just that I've noticed that there is a flip phone, a cassette, and an iPod Nano all in the drawer. So I'm not really sure what's happening here with this person has just, they have a hard time letting go is what I'm seeing here. Hoarding behavior is what, and there's, I think 5, 6, 7 different pairs of headphones. So, I think organization, it's just a way to keep hoarding. So maybe there's some thrown out that needs to be done here.
And one of the things up here too, you can expect that in this kind of messed up drawer too, that this highlighter is probably dried out. The glue probably won't even come out of the bottle anymore. And you just don't know because you have so many things in there. But in here, although Adrian pointed out, it does also give you the ability to collect a few more things. At least they're organized and you know where they are. So, and you know that you have 6 or 7 pairs of earbuds. All right. And it does remind me of the art of tidying and being able to say goodbye and thank you to things that you have multiple cases of. All right. So that's why we're here to talk about effective organization in D2L. We want to make things easier for students and for instructors so that you can locate the materials and students can navigate your courses easily. This way, they gain confidence in your course and they feel the need to ask fewer questions, at least about those details. Well, where do I find this? Where do I find that? And the questions that you answer can be more content related and really have some meat to it. So here's just some examples that are real courses in D2L right now. And they're different types of organization. You'll also notice that this first one has these little blue boxes here. This is representative. There are 2 different experiences in D2L that we're using at Delaware Tech. This one with the blue little boxes is the new content experience. If you haven't seen it, it might pop up every once in a while. Turn on new content experience and you can say yes or no. This is the classic experience. But whichever way you design is how students will engage with your course. So if you're doing the new content experience, they're going to see those blue boxes. If you're doing the classic, they're going to see these little dots. Does that make sense? Are we good so far? Okay. So just a few different ways to be able to model this organization. And again, recognize that there are 4 different ways here. So there is not a one size fits all. We're not trying to tell you you have to do it by unit and you have no other choice. The idea is that you're really thinking about what makes most sense for you, for your content, and for your students. This first one comes from an English 101 course, and it's organized by unit. You'll see that they have a couple of different things up here at the top too. Their course schedule, which is often inside of the getting started area, they've pulled that out because they felt like, well, that was something I really wanted to have up front and in hand. So you might see some differences there as well. But here's unit 1. And I like that it's labeled personal essay writing. It doesn't just say unit 1. It gives the students an idea of what they're going to experience inside that unit. We've got one that's organized by module. This is a nursing example. And we have modules, again, they have their getting started at the top. Their modules are labeled so that the students know what they're doing. And then they have some other resources below that. We have a physics one that's organized by topic. And you'll recognize that, for instance, the topic is motion, and that begins on January 24th. Forces and energy begins on February 14th. Providing those dates helps students recognize the pacing, and also helps show us that those topics are going to take 2 or 3 weeks to really go into, and that's okay too. However, you can organize it by weeks like this one did, and you'll see at the top, they have week 15 at the top. So maybe they've used this hidden example. They've hidden so that the topmost one is the most current week. Some people organize from week 1 down. So you can choose that organization that works best for you. Some of the feedback from students, for instance, in the survey, was that every single week, their modules were exactly the same. And they really enjoyed that. It made it easier for them to find the assignment. Inside that module, they had intro, then they had notes, then they had assignment, and then they had a quiz or a test every time. And they felt like all of their detailed courses should be organized that way, so that way they could predict, they could understand what was going to happen in the class. We have another quote that is talking again about that organization within the class. They had a reading section, a listen and review section, a watch section, then they had assignments, exams, quizzes section. And they felt like this helped really provide them with the tools they needed to navigate that course and be successful. So let's think about your course or courses, right? How is your course organized? And if it's not organized yet, which one of those examples do you think might be applicable to your course? Feel free to share it in chat or to unmute, and let's talk a little bit about organization in courses. Now, Adrian had thought when we were playing this, he said, usually people have opinions about how things are organized. So we thought someone might speak up.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've worked with some of you on courses and designing courses. So I know I know you have opinions about how courses are designed. This is no longer a theoretical, Adrian thinks maybe. Adrian knows for sure that you do. And what's funny is I was talking, when Laura and I were talking, and then, maybe this will help stimulate this a little bit. When I thought about organizing the course, I started thinking about like how I used to organize my classroom when I was a teacher, and how that's something that unfortunately you don't really get to do in higher ed, because you got to move rooms, you got to be flexible, and different people are in there and all that stuff. But there's definitely different schools of thought about like how many posters, what kinds of posters, what do you put where? Do you have vocabulary? Do you update it? Does it change based on what you're going to be doing for that next section? And how do you lay it out? Do you cover it up when there's an assessment so that the students can't use the posters for their assessment? Or do you just leave it out because you just don't care? And you know what, if the student's smart enough to look on the wall, congratulations, like you got a free answer. So there's people have opinions about how their classes are organized. And I think the organization that you bring to your course in D2L or any LMS, I think that's you expressing that same sort of concept of how do I think it's important for this information to come across to my students, and what do I think is the best way. So I'd love to hear if you guys do any of these four or something completely different.
So I'll share. So my son I've probably told this story before. My son graduated from Delaware Tech. So I had the opportunity for 2 years to watch him on the other side take a lot of various classes at the college and see a lot of different organization, when he'd say, hey, Mom, I can't find this, or where's that, or what I'm in. So what I found just from observing him is he was most successful in classes that were organized by week, because he usually knew the date. And when it would say, week 4, and it had the dates in there, he's like, okay, today's, may the 4th be with you. And he knew which week to be in. So that's why, just from watching him and that experience, he had no idea what a unit was or where he should be, or a module, unless it was the only thing that was on the top. But that was one thing. If things were labeled with dates, he could easily navigate and find where he should be. So that's just a personal story that, I've often shared, but I come to these things because then I think, am I doing it really in the best way? So I'm always curious to, kind of see what other people are doing.
Yeah, I think Tammy makes a great point. I was just looking, I just recently switched from like the weekly or the modules over to by topic. And I think students I think it gives them a good overview when it's by topic. They, get a little more excited about what's to come and that kind of thing. But the example you showed with a topic and the date underneath of it, I was just thinking I need to add the date on, because that's exactly what Tammy said has been my concern. And sometimes students can't. They're not sure. They don't go back to the schedule to see, okay, what are we working on this week? So it can be confusing. So I thought adding the date to it was a great idea.
I actually really like units too, but I like weeks too. But the problem we have is that we have 7-week, 10-week, 12-week, and 15-week, and it all has to be the same shell. And it's really frustrating because I prefer to teach week by week, but then if I do it week by week, it's not going to be the same depending on what class version I'm teaching, and we all have to use the same shell. So I have to, do you see what I mean? Like I'm going in and I'm making it week by week. So like when I'm right now redesigning a course and I'm putting it into units, but I have weekly recommendations because I like weeks. I'm assuming other people like weeks too.
So it sounds like it's almost like that the date aspect is the most important aspect necessarily when we're talking about all of these things, which makes a lot of sense. Having this concept of where am I in place and time, right, in this course. And so if it's super clear what those units are, that's great, but it's still not necessarily going to tell you like, oh, did we finish that? Did we switch? Or is, this kind of goes in both places. So which one is it? Which one should I be looking in? And I'm not really sure. And so, yeah, so dates can definitely do that. Obviously, there's a lot of guidance that happens in person as far as helping students to understand where they are in a course that is difficult to translate to the course itself, trying to help students to understand where they are in that course. So I think that's really interesting. Is like everybody's like, hey, I like these different styles. I still think dates are useful, like, regardless of which mode I'm doing.
Well, and I think it goes back to we know that when we break things down into smaller blocks, that helps students. And so even though we might, as instructors, think in terms of units, I do think it's helpful for the students to see it in terms of weeks, because they don't get overwhelmed and kind of just don't bother to look at it at all. So, but yes, dates added by the instructor. Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. Definitely don't add.
Stacy put in the chat that the dates were added by the instructor. If you put dates in the dev shell, it's madness, she said.
Right. Yes. Well, and especially if we decide to delay the semester by 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, I saw you on mute. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I was going to pop it in the chat as a backup plan, but sure. So BSN does make it consistent between the courses, which we find very helpful because it helps the questions dwindle as they move through the courses, right? So hopefully in that first course, we do a lot more support and pointing and orientation videos, but by their second and or ninth course, they've got it. They know where to find things because we do have the same structure in each. And we do a combo to discuss the weeks versus topics versus modules. So by combination, I mean that every week is identified with week 1 and then the name of the topic in the navigation on the left. So they know which week they're in and what the main topic is before they click into it.
And you make a really good point that is something that is a conversation you might have with your department or with your colleagues who teach the same course, to try to decide, well, is there an organizational structure that really works for this class, for this for either our department, so that all math courses are organized in a similar fashion, or if there's anything that can help those students really progress.
Yeah,
I'm seeing in the, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Kelly makes a really good point because it's nice that she can do that. It's nice that as instructors, we have the flexibility to do those different things. But on the other hand, I'm not sure it's in the best interest of students that we have so much flexibility, because like my son, his classes were all over the place. I mean, that's the other thing, is they're having to relearn every time they go into a new class, if it's structured different, how to navigate that class, versus if we were all just using a template, it would be easier for our students. But okay, off that soapbox.
Well, and Stacy did put in the chat that English and math are coordinating, which I think is amazing. I think that's a great idea, because it is, Tammy, you're right. From working with the students in tutoring center, most students struggled with technology versus the content of the course. It wasn't that they didn't know the math or the English, it was they didn't know where to find the information or how to do their assignment. So I think especially for those beginning courses where they're not familiar with D2L, to have it be the same in math and English, I think is going to be a huge relief for them, so that they get that consistency and don't have to feel like they're spending hours clicking, because they're inefficient clickers too, like they are. I've coined it. That's copyright. That's my phrase, inefficient clicker. Because, if I were to do something, the way I go about finding it, I might just do 2 clicks, but for them, they have to go back to the way they found it the first time. So they've, like I know for English, they have it by units, and then they've got the reading in there. And so they'll go through all the clicks to get there. And I'm like, oh, you could just do this, but they don't, and so they do get bogged down and lost and 75 tabs open.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake we made is when we rolled out D2L, not just giving a template. But I know we want people to also have their flexibility.
Well, we can't put it back in the box anyway. So we just got to do the best we can moving forward.
I know, Adrian.
No sticking it back in that box. The box is open. But, it's what's good, like, obviously, from the perspective of a student, consistency, regardless of what the consistency is, obviously there's going to be better consistency and worse consistency, but consistency is certainly very, very helpful. They've been structured for most of their lives if they're coming to us straight out of the K-12 system. So they're used to, here's my schedule, and I can stick it in the front of my binder, and I can just go from place to place to place every day. And now we had like a rotating schedule in our middle school and A and B days and all that nonsense. Listen, if a kid shows up to the wrong place at that point, you just feel sorry for them and you point them where they need to go, because clearly that's a structural issue. And that's what we're talking about, that there can be structural issues. So we have to have some sort of structure, but they also are going to be leaving us, going to either different institutions or into the work world. And those places are going to have different structures. And then they're going to have to, be able to navigate, the DMV or filing their taxes or whatever it is. And different sites have different organizations, some of which make sense, most of which don't. There's a lot of people talk about the Amazon model or different websites like that, where it's like, listen, the goal of these people is to get you where you want to go as fast as possible, to get your money as fast as possible. There's a lot of good insight into doing a design that works that way. How do I get my student to the place I want them to be as fast as possible, so that they can get to the content and produce the work as quickly as possible, right? That's the same sort of idea. Our whole UI design concept should be the fewest number of clicks and the most clarity to get them where they need to be as quickly as they can. And that's how commerce works. So, we can look at some of that stuff and how that's organized. And even that's organized differently. You can do it by the quick links at the top. You can go to departments. You can do this. You can do that. You can see what the special of the day is, right? So that's announcements, right? You have the announcement on, what are today's special? That could be a widget. That could be the calendar. So there's a lot of different tools, and we'll talk about those widget tools next time. That's like a preview thing, all right? See how I threw that in there, getting people excited about the next time. But yeah, the idea is that, like, the consistency, but also clarity, right? Even if it's not going to be consistent, you can still have different organizations that can still be clear. And so it's not that necessarily that it's different. That's not necessarily the bad thing. The bad thing could be the differences in the lack of clarity, right? This you could have a module and a week and a topic, but if it's not displayed clearly and organized clearly, that's when the issues are going to fall, and that's when the students are going to struggle. So, I think we need to focus, right, about the clarity. Is the clarity there to get students from A to B to C to D, so that they know where they're supposed to go?
And I think it's hard as an instructor to know. I mean, it's clear to you and me, because I did it, right? It's like writing. When you write something, well, it made sense to me because these are my words. So I think getting feedback from, someone else, maybe in a different department or from your students. But, I think that can be really helpful, because if someone who doesn't know about your course can look at it and can figure out what they need to do and where they need to go, then it is clear. And if they can't figure it out, then you've got to do something. But I think most of us, when you're teaching the class, you think that you've made it clear, but it's I think on us to get that feedback from others to see, is it really clear, and how can we help our students understand where we're trying to go better.
And looking at the structure, there's diving into some of those examples that we had. For instance, this is that English 101, but it's expanded just a little bit more. So you can see that we had it organized by units here. And when that unit is clicked, then the little submodules come out of it. One of the things I wanted to point out is there is an instructor guide here. So you can consider using an instructor guide. I'm not sure how many people have K-12 experience, but you get instructor guides that are about, 500 pages each, and you have 6 of them for a textbook, and you have to be able to read them. This is nice. Some courses are beginning an instructor guide for the whole course to talk about how it was organized, what's the reason behind the videos or the activities, so that it helps someone who gets your course or gets your dev shell to understand what to do with it. This is a nice feature, though. This is just the Unit 1 instructor guide stuck in there. So that's a possibility, so that when you're organizing your course and you're trying to make sure, as Carrie Ann was saying, that it's as organized as possible and it's clear for other people, if you start kind of going through this instructor guide, it might help you start to realize that maybe a step was missed. So it's not quite as clear as you wanted it to be. And then over on the other side, you can see, for instance, Unit 1 learning materials. That's expanded here. And you see that there were reading and strategies and instruction inside there, the writing process and instruction. And then here's a critical thinking resources. It happens to be hidden at the moment. Maybe it would be unhidden as students need it, or it's resources for the instructor to be able to help. There may be some additional activities. If you're finding that students are kind of struggling with the concept, here's some additional things that we could pull out of the hat if our cohort of students needs that. So that's one way to be able to look at it. Another way is if you look at this nursing example, you have in the middle, here's the module. You've got this part, this is where you put the details in, where you can kind of edit things and put the details in. The only thing is you can't rely on this in all settings, because students with a phone or even with a computer, it's not accessible. It doesn't have that little read button up here. So that's why a lot of this information is often duplicated here or expanded upon in this introduction to module section here. But they have a consistent structure. There's an introduction, there's objectives, and then there's content. And it happens consistently throughout their modules to help students really be able to figure out what's going on. But then another part is this here where they have direct links. Now these are really simple links. This one's introduction to module 1, which would take them here to this page. Objectives for module 1 would take them here. But there's a lot of instructors who use those live links inside their course pages to really help ease that navigation for students. Can you give me a quick thumbs up if you've been able to use some of those direct links before, or if you've helped your students navigate with that? Yeah, okay, good, okay. So when you click into it, for instance, one of the statements that we had in this representative in the survey was talking about having an instructor who put multiple links in multiple places. So there was a course calendar, but they had broken it into weekly and daily events that needed to occur. And in each of those areas, there were links that helped students navigate. She also provided an announcement or an email that would have those links there as well. So it really helped the students get to where they needed to go. And that student liked it a lot. So that was one way that she supported her students in navigating her course. So if you think about your course or the course that you would like your course to be, how might you help students really know about the navigation? So we started to touch on that a little bit. That's why I put these ones in here, because we started to talk about how do we organize it, and then being clear, how do you let your students know how you've organized your course? And feel free to pop it in the chat or to unmute and let us know. What are strategies that can be used?
I know that we tend to have a video that's posted with a course overview where the instructor will give them a brief walkthrough. And then I also, like the first week or two, I won't, like the first day, I'll give them a very brief tour, like here's this, and this. But then the next couple of days, I'll maybe pick one thing. Like the second day of class, I'll say, well, here's one area. And then the next week, the 2 days, I'll pick 2 more areas where I think that they're going to need to go the most. And maybe save the grade book for the last, because they're not really going to need to know how to read their grade book the first week of class, because they're not going to have any grades. So I just kind of do it a really brief one, but thorough at the very beginning. And then each class for the next week or so, I pick 1 or 2 different things to show them just to make sure.
This is Jennifer. We do the same thing. I do a welcome video that kind of shows them how to navigate, get started in the course. And then it's also posted in the course. And then each week at the beginning of each class, I actually, because we do synchronous web conferencing, so we're meeting each week. So at the beginning, I actually walk them through, D2L and where they can find everything for the week and what they should be doing. So we kind of go through it together.
Excellent. And I saw that Stacy had pointed out in the chat that she has a standard course orientation and announcements, like a template where she has a video that shows them where everything's going to be week by week. You also talked about bookmarks, Stacy. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about how you help students use bookmarks?
Oh, sure. So when I'm within the course and there's that little option to like add a bookmark to whatever page you're on in D2L, I tell them to use that, but use it sparingly. And I tell my students, it's like when you're on Reddit and you want to save a post, but you can only save 100. So you have to be really choosy about what you save. So I tell them to use it for assignments mainly, because the way that our assignment instructions are set up, they're not always listed in the submission link. You can see them in another place. So it's sometimes, or if we have like an outline that's building towards an essay, I'll say it might be a good idea to add a bookmark on the essay instructions while you're completing the outline. But I actually have a question about this because English 101 and English 11 are in two different course shells. Can direct links work between course shells if students are members of both? Like can I add a direct link to another course if I know they're enrolled in it?
Yes, if they're enrolled in in both courses, you can direct link from one course to the other.
Cool, thanks.
The thing that's obviously going to be potentially confusing about that is that it might not be immediately apparent to them that they've left one course and gone to another. So that's definitely something just to be kind of aware of. I mean, we use this a lot. Actually, like the Learning with Technology course that everyone can get to, there's a template where you can drop that in and there's a link to the Learning with Technology course. And because every student's enrolled in the Learning with Technology course, they can just hop right over to that course. And so that's essentially what you're saying is like, if they're in two courses, can you direct link? Yes, but they may not know.
I see what you're saying, but I do kind of love that. So if I'm like, hey, and if you have trouble with this, here's a link to the Learning with Technology course.
Yeah, and which is
explore that.
Yeah, and that's totally how that's designed to work.
Super cool.
So yeah, but that's the only thing I will say is a warning to you that students, unless it's drastically different, and even if it's drastically different, let's just be real, students may not be aware of the fact that they've gone from one course to another. So just a heads up for that.
I know that for the English courses, the 101 and the 011, sometimes there's some color coding, right? I think, or some thematic differences, but Adrian's right. It might not be obvious. And even if you say, hey, by the way, this will be your direct link to 011 now, so you'll see how your resources can support you in your 101, they still might not be immediately aware of it. The only reason that matters a lot, Stacy, is for them to navigate back, for them to recognize the navigation back. So that's why it matters.
Yeah, I never know what I'm clicking on either, so I get it.
Well, and we've had, for instance, some tickets or some issues instructors have had that for some reason D2L, and you might have had this experience when you've copied a course, D2L will continue to link to your old course. So your students click on that and they say, I can't access this because they weren't enrolled in that course. Again, of course, that makes it possible as long as Adrian said, they're enrolled in both. Just as far as the navigation back, that would be the challenge. So you have to make sure that they understood, or maybe you design the link so it opens in a new tab. So at least the 101 stays open while they go to the 011. Something like that might help with that. Any other thoughts?
Hi, I was just going to add one of the ideas that I had shared with some of our faculty was we create these nice course tour orientation videos, and then you look at how long students spend watching them and you want to cry because they spend about 15 seconds, like kind of looking at your 15-minute video of where everything is. And then they email you and say, I didn't see this in your video. But an option that we could have is to make that like the the gatekeeper activity, right? Like you don't see anything until you've accessed and spent time, at least engaged with that content. And then, if you wanted to kind of dig deeper into it, you could say, oh, I see you only spent 30 seconds on it. I'll release the rest of the course once you spent the time watching the video, so I know that you are aware of all the, nuances.
So that's
Good.
actually something that it would be really, really cool to be able to do. You can certainly set up the release conditions so that they have to interact with that video, but there is not a time required to spend on page aspect to that. And this is actually, believe it or not, one of the things can be really, really frustrating for like training courses and stuff like that, where and even if the video runs, right? Like, so I had to do the boater safety course. You can't, like, it just auto plays and you can't navigate until a certain amount of time has passed by, right? So you can set up things to be able to do that outside of D2L, but those are complicated. But even then, you could keep the video muted and have something else up on the other page that you're doing, and then you just come back, oh, look, the video's done, click next. And so even time spent is not the best. One of the things you can potentially do is if you turn your video into something like an ed puzzle, and then you associate ed puzzle with your grade book, and then a student has to get a certain grade on the ed puzzle assignment before the rest of the content is released, then you can actually like more accurately, more effectively restrict course access based on their understanding and having completed the ed puzzle. So that definitely takes a whole layer of setup. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it's like, oh, just pop it in and you're good to go. But it definitely is one of those things where if you really, really wanted to pinpoint students and make sure they understood, you can either associate it with a quiz inside of D2L where they have to watch the video and take the quiz. And so you know that they understand it from that. Or if you really want to make sure they watch the video, you can turn it into an ed puzzle, do a grade association, and do that. So those are two options. I know that sometimes we can be like, oh my gosh, quizzing them based off of this video, isn't that just punitive? Listen, if they're not going to watch the video and then be punitive to you because they have no idea where to go, so they're just going to email you every single week asking where I find this stuff, that's just as bad. So all you're doing, and it doesn't have to be worth very much or whatever, but it doesn't have to be worth anything, really. If you just want to have it set to release, they just can't do the rest of the course until they do it. So, you don't have to necessarily grade them on it, but you can be like, hey, you've got to do this and you've got to get the right answers because I have to know that you know what you're doing in this course. Otherwise,
can you show me how to do that? Because like after 15 years of assigning readings, like we need reading quizzes. They're not going to do it if you don't quiz them on the reading. So like, is that really involved to do? Or is it like, once you get it down, like,
yeah, it's not actually all that difficult to do. So like, I'm in my sandbox course. So just give me a second to get that to a good spot. Laura, is that okay if I stop your screen share and show this just real quick?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, so the first thing you do is you create the quiz that you want to use. Can everybody see D2L? Okay, I don't have my green box. I don't know why I don't have my green box, but it's not there. And so once you've got the quiz set up, what you can do is let's say for instance, I have week 2 here, and I don't want you to be able to go to week 3 until you've completed a quiz that's associated with week 2, right? So I can go here to unit 3, and then I click right here where it says add dates and restrictions. And then you'll see here it says release conditions. And so then I just create a release condition where I say student score on a quiz or completed a quiz attempt. Score on a quiz, we'll say, this, I have no idea, this quiz, sure. Greater than or equal to, and then I can say like 90%. And I click create, and now that release condition is on there. Or sorry, less than or equal to 90%. So I would need to change that to be, greater than or equal to. So boop, 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 boop. There you go. And now, unless they get greater than or equal to 90% on that quiz, they can't see anything in this week's module. It's just blocked. It just doesn't exist. So that is how you can do that. And so you can do that again, if you have a getting started video, you can literally say, like, now once you do release conditions, you can set it up so that everything releases after the video, which would literally just be like, so I have this release condition on week 3. Now that it's created, I can do browse my release conditions. And it's like, oh, do I want to just to attempt? Do I want them to score a certain thing? So like, I can see what things I've already done as far as release conditions go, and then I can just attach them and it will attach the same release conditions. So this one hasn't shown up yet in my list. Oh, because I didn't actually say to do it. I didn't say save. So make sure you save, ladies and gentlemen.
The only other issue with that is that the students can still go to the assignments directly through that
Correct.
tab. So it doesn't necessarily, unless you have the release condition attached to specific assignments also.
Right, which you can also do. Like that's also like you can, if I go here to any of my assignments and I edit this assignment, I can do availability and add a release condition to that assignment. The other thing that we could do if it was something where you really, really, really wanted to lock down and do release conditions and all that stuff is that you can kind of change your nav bar around a little bit to be able to like just not have the assignments link in the nav bar. Now that's risky because that means all of your other links have to work right. So I would not recommend it because there's two, like I wouldn't recommend it unless you were willing to spend hours and hours and hours testing every single link in your course every single semester to make sure that it worked and that the release conditions were correct. If you don't want to do that, for which I do not blame you, then just put the release conditions on the assignments if you want to really restrict that students. And again, once you create a release condition, you can use that release condition anywhere else in the course. So it's not like you have to go through the process of creating that release condition over and over and over again. Now that I saved that one release condition, that's what I did. I didn't click update the first time. If I go here and I do add a release condition, add existing, you can see receives greater than or equal to 90%. So I can just check that, click attach, and I can just reuse that condition. So once I've created the condition, I can reuse it everywhere in the course. And it's just as easy as doing the drop-down menus. So, all right, back to you, Laura. Woo!
And I did see Rodney had turned on his camera. I want to give him an opportunity if he still wanted to talk.
Yeah, so I'm going back 3 topics ago now. So from a student perspective, I'm working on my MBA at UD online, and I have a professor this semester who is not using any links anywhere. So I do go crazy trying to go back, and I'm going back through the system over and clicking and clicking and clicking. So and I guess my tip is as many of those links as you can include, as many places as you think students might need them. Definitely a useful tool to have availability for the students to kind of like going to the Amazon. When you're shopping at Amazon, you always have, well, this was the last item you looked at. You can click on it and go right back to it. It's so useful to be able to click on certain things and go back and forth with ease. So it's just again, I'm about 3 topics late, but.
No, that's great. And it's still applicable here too, because as you're creating that course or you're trying to make sure that you've provided that navigational support, you can ask students, hey, is this helpful? Is this useful? What else could help with you? Thank you, Rodney.
Yep.
And I do see that there is a question about what program or site people use to make videos for their courses. We have some feedback about Screencast-O-Matic. We have Google Slides or Canva. It depends on Screencast-O-Matic if you pay for it or not, as far as how long your videos can be. I see a QuickTime. Any other thoughts or questions? I mean, I use Zoom a lot too when I want to make a video. It's because we have the pro version. You can save it straight to the cloud and it's easy. You don't have to have room on your computer to download it. if you want to be able to upload to YouTube or to share it, if you want to share it over to Vimeo, which is very easy, you just provide your Zoom link and a ticket, and the audio, video and audio people will put it up in Vimeo for you. You just tell them what you want to call it, and all you have to do is give them the link to it. You don't have to download anything. If you want to upload to YouTube, then you need to download and then upload. So then that requires space on your computer to do that. One thing thinking about that though is when Chala, I think, was talking about when you have, for instance, the video that's the overview, and it might be lengthy because you're trying to give them everything in one. Maybe if you have that opportunity to write down your time codes there, your timestamps, that might be useful. So Chala said she had a student who said, oh, I didn't see this in your video. You can say, well, actually just refer them back to the timestamps. And then even if they don't want to watch a 15-minute video, they know to show up at 11 minutes and 52 seconds. And that's where they're going to be able to find out about how do I answer a discussion board, or whatever it is. I mean, that might be worth your time to do that up front. And you can save that in a note in Outlook too. So you could just like paste it into the email too. So they email and say, I can't find whatever, you go, boom. So you can either direct them back or you can provide that little support. And then and then that's another way to help them.
Can I ask a different question about
Yeah.
where you were talking about Vimeo and the college being able to post our videos over there? Does it make sense for like a department to have like all of their videos in there? Like, I'm just trying to think about structurally we have tons of videos in business. And one of the things that I feel like we don't do well is share, because everybody's like making their own this and that, where we could just have a repository of videos for a course tour or for a specific project. And it's like, oh, I'm making this and I made this and I made that. Well, if we could have a place where everything is that's, because space is always an issue for videos, but that might be a good strategy for us.
And you could even have, they call them showcases instead of playlists, right, Adrian, I think, in Vimeo. So when you've given your videos to Vimeo, then they can also be organized. And so the showcase might be Business 101, and then there might be a showcase for Business 125, or there might be a showcase for all these videos about how to make a business plan, and there's a few different versions of it. So you can have some of those available. And then that also helps you that if, for instance, an instructor is out, or they don't have, or maybe you didn't have time to make that video, but you need one, you might be able to find the resource there. Or, someone retires, now you still have access to all those glorious videos that they made that could be lost otherwise. So that's the other value of utilizing that Vimeo account.
Great, thank you.
And I think Stacy made a good point. I mean, I think like the course tour videos, we say the free account gives you 15 minutes. I do think if we're talking longer than a couple minutes, they're tuning out, right? This is the TikTok generation. So maybe, that's giving me an idea that I think I'll break that stuff up maybe, and course tour won't be one giant long video that we know they're tuning out after the first minute or 30 seconds.
Yeah. Sometimes my course tour videos, I just do a real high level overview. Yeah. By the way, you're going to see that the course is structured this way and that, so that way it can stay closer to that 3 to 5 minutes that Stacy's talking about. Mm-hmm. And in research that I've seen, really much more than 5 or 6 minutes. And what you're saying, Tammy, I mean, busy people, it doesn't even have to be kids. I mean, busy people.
It's me.
Look at the video.
It's me. I'm guilty.
Right? They're like, that video is 10 minutes long.
Yeah.
I'm not watching that.
I'm out. Yeah, I'm out. Yes.
And if it's on YouTube, it's real easy to click on the side of that video and go 10 seconds ahead. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm, yeah. And so, I mean, you skip around. So, even if it clocks that you watched it, you didn't really watch it, but you're looking for that information. That's why those timestamps are nice if you have the opportunity, because then you help people navigate to exactly what they need to help them the most.
And especially if you are, we talked about this with instructors when we talked about giving information about how to use D2L as instructors, right? Where, we had these D2L provides long videos, but when you're trying to watch a video and also do stuff, especially if you don't have two screens, you can't do it, right? Or you have to make the video really small and then make the screen really small. So students who are often using their phone or their iPad, you know, but they're definitely not on a desktop unless they're like at school. You know, if they are going to watch the video, they probably don't have a second screen to, you know, actually go along with you and click the different things that you're clicking. So even though we are trying to make it super useful and helpful, it may not be that helpful for students because they can't do what we think that they would be the most helpful, which would be to have two screens and be able to click along. So maybe more, like people were saying in the chat, you know, just here's content and here's all these things. And then here's how you look at your grades. You know, those very kind of short and sweet videos might be the best way to go, because then students can watch that 10 seconds. You know how you're trying to fix stuff on YouTube or fix stuff at your house by watching YouTube. So you like watch those 10 seconds and then you do it and see if it works. Something more like that, you know, where they are able to do it, because I think the research shows like 40 to 50% of the student access of LMS is on their phone. So.
And Jennifer, and I know we have a few Jennifers in our Lunch and Learn today, but Jennifer had recommended exactly what you were saying, Carrie Ann. She'd put it into the chat that maybe there's a series of videos, one's for content, one's for assignments, one's for grades, so the students can access those as they're able. Okay. Wow, we have had a rich conversation today. This is great. So to kind of sum it up, though, to bring together everything that we've talked about, you do want to have organization of your course, but it needs to make sense for your course, for your students, for the instructor. Maybe it's department-wide, maybe it's all English 101 are organized the same, if that is making sense for you. But really, the point of it is communicating that organization. And it came out of our discussion today that having dates in there, even though it might be a pain in the neck for the instructor to always have to update those dates, can be so helpful for your students that it might be worth it in the long run, because then they're better able to navigate the course more independently. And really, an organized course is so beneficial for students. So I want to thank you so much for coming to this Lunch and Learn about effective D2L organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.